My name is Sarah, and I need you to understand something before we go any further. There's a special kind of evil that waits until you're at your weakest to strike. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who promised to love you in sickness and in health, then you already know the gut-wrenching pain I'm about to describe. This story starts on a Thursday afternoon in my guest bedroom, a room I'd been confined to for 3 months after a near-fatal car accident left me broken, vulnerable, and completely dependent on the one person who was supposed to protect me, my husband, Michael. I was lying there, struggling through physical therapy exercises, when I heard my 9-year-old daughter Emma's voice drifting up from downstairs. Sweet, innocent Emma, talking on the phone in that matter-of-fact way kids do. "But my mommy's not dead," she said, confusion tinging her words. "She's in her room upstairs. Do you want to talk to her?" The world stopped. My blood turned to ice in my veins. The resistance band I'd been using slipped from my trembling fingers and snapped against my leg, but I barely felt it. Dead? Who was telling people I was dead? I held my breath, my heart hammering so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Emma continued, her voice uncertain now. "The insurance lady says Daddy told them Mommy died in the accident. But that's not true. Mommy made me pancakes last week. Well, Daddy helped, but Mommy was there." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. My own daughter, my baby girl, having to defend my existence to a stranger on the phone. The room started spinning, and it had nothing to do with my injuries. Michael had declared me dead. My husband, the man who'd held my hand in the hospital, who'd cried at my bedside, who'd promised to take care of everything while I recovered, had told the insurance company I was deceased. The implications crashed over me like a tidal wave. Life insurance, benefits, money. While I'd been lying helpless in this room, drugged on pain medication, isolated from friends and family for my own good, he'd been erasing my existence, collecting a death benefit, planning a future without me. Or worse, planning to make his lie come true. But here's the thing Michael didn't know about me. Here's what he'd forgotten during our 15 years of marriage, while I played the devoted wife, the supportive partner, the woman who'd left her career in insurance fraud investigation to focus on family. I knew exactly how these schemes worked. I'd spent years tracking down people who faked deaths, staged accidents, manipulated paperwork. I knew every trick, every loophole, every way to catch a fraud artist red-handed. And more than that, I had resources he didn't know existed, money he'd never seen, skills I'd never needed to use. Until now. That afternoon, listening to my daughter explain to a stranger that her mother wasn't actually dead, something inside me crystallized into pure, cold determination. Michael thought I was weak, dependent, helpless. He had no idea I was standing right there on the other side of that bedroom door, listening to every word. And he definitely didn't know what I was capable of. If you're ready to hear how I came back from the dead to destroy the man who tried to bury me alive, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of this. Drop a comment below if you've ever been underestimated by someone who should have known better. This is for everyone who's ever been counted out too soon. Let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand how deep this knife went, you need to know what my life looked like before it all shattered. 15 years ago, I met Michael Chen at a corporate networking event in downtown Austin. I was 27, working as a fraud investigator for a major insurance company, the kind of job where you spent your days tracking down people who faked injuries, staged accidents, forged documents. I was good at it, really good. I could spot a lie 3 sentences in, could trace paper trails that others missed, could read body language like a book written just for me. Michael was 30, a financial advisor with a boutique firm, charming in that effortless way that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He had dark hair that fell just right, a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and this way of listening that made you believe he actually cared about every word you said. We talked for hours that night about everything and nothing. He loved hiking, old movies, Thai food. I loved my work, mystery novels, early morning runs. We fit together like puzzle pieces I didn't know were missing. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at Zilker Park, surrounded by live oaks and friends who swore we were perfect for each other. Emma came along 3 years after that, a beautiful, curious little girl with Michael's dark eyes and my stubbornness. Life was good. We bought a 3-bedroom ranch house in Cedar Park with a backyard big enough for Emma's swing set. I left the fraud investigation job when I was pregnant, transitioning into marketing for a tech startup that paid twice as much and let me work from home. Michael's business grew steadily. We took family vacations to South Padre Island. We hosted neighborhood barbecues. We were living the American dream. But here's what Michael never knew, what I never told him. When my grandmother passed away 7 years into our marriage, she left me everything. $800,000. Her life savings from running a successful catering business, invested wisely over decades. I was her only grandchild, her favorite, the one she'd taught to make pierogi from scratch in her tiny kitchen. The lawyer who handled her estate suggested I keep it separate, in my name only. You never know, he'd said with a knowing look. Protect yourself. At the time, I'd thought it was cynical. Michael and I were solid. We were partners. We shared everything. But something in my fraud investigator brain whispered caution, so I listened. I set up an account in my maiden name, invested conservatively, never mentioned it. The money grew quietly over 8 years, a safety net I told myself I'd never need. That decision, that one moment of protective instinct, would later save my life. Our marriage wasn't perfect, of course. Michael had his flaws. He was secretive about his finances sometimes, brushing off my questions about where his bonus money went. He traveled more than I liked for client meetings. He could be cold when stressed, distant in ways that made me feel like I was talking to a stranger. But I chalked it up to work pressure, to the normal ebb and flow of long-term relationships. Every marriage has its seasons, right? I focused on Emma, on my career, on building our life. Then came March 15th, 6 months ago, the day that split my life into before and after. I was driving home from the grocery store on Route 183, windows down, singing along to the radio. The sky was that perfect Texas blue, the kind that makes you grateful to be alive. I never saw the truck that ran the red light, a drunk driver in a Ford F-250, going 60 in a 35 zone. He T-boned my Honda Civic on the driver's side, and the world exploded into metal and glass and screaming. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance or the first surgery. My first clear memory is waking up in Del Seaton Medical Center 3 days later, tubes everywhere, pain radiating through every cell of my body. Michael was there, sitting in the chair beside my bed, his face haggard and tear-stained. "Sarah," he'd whispered, gripping my hand. "Thank God. I thought I'd lost you." The injuries were catastrophic. Shattered pelvis, broken ribs, punctured lung, severe concussion, torn ligaments in both legs. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. 3 months in the hospital followed. Surgeries, physical therapy, pain medication that turned days into fog. Michael visited every day, sometimes twice. He brought Emma on weekends, though she'd cry when she saw all the machines. He talked to doctors, made decisions when I couldn't, held my hand through the worst of it. "Don't worry about anything," he'd say, stroking my hair. "I'm handling everything at home, the bills, the insurance paperwork, all of it. You just focus on getting better." I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner, Emma's father. When I finally came home after 3 months, still weak and broken, I believed I was lucky to have someone so devoted. The guest bedroom on the first floor became my recovery room, easier than climbing stairs to our master suite. Michael set everything up perfectly. Hospital bed, walker, medications organized in daily pill containers, baby monitor so he could hear if I needed help at night. I was grateful. So pathetically. blindly grateful. I had no idea I was being moved into position like a chess piece, isolated and controlled, prepared for checkmate. The afternoon Emma made that phone call, I stood frozen outside the guest bedroom door for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. My legs, still weak from months of atrophy, trembled beneath me. The walker I'd been using clattered to the floor. Crash. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot. "Mommy," Emma's voice called out, uncertain now. "Are you okay?" I forced myself to move, to breathe, to function. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I called back, and I was amazed at how steady my voice sounded when my entire world was disintegrating. "Just drop something. Who are you talking to?" "The insurance lady," Emma said, appearing at the bottom of the stairs with the cordless phone still in her small hand. Her face was scrunched in confusion, the way it got when she was trying to solve a math problem that didn't make sense. "She said Daddy told them you died." "But I said you didn't. I told her you were upstairs. Did I do something wrong?" My heart shattered and reassembled itself in that moment. My baby girl, my innocent Emma, caught in the middle of something she couldn't possibly understand. I made myself smile, made myself walk down those stairs like my knees weren't buckling. "You did exactly right, honey. Can I talk to her?" But the line was already dead. The insurance representative had hung up, probably scrambling to figure out what the hell was happening, why a supposedly deceased woman's child was insisting she was alive. I stood there in our cheerful yellow kitchen, the kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals, where Emma had taken her first steps, where Michael had kissed me goodbye every morning, and felt bile rising in my throat. My hands started shaking first, then my whole body. I gripped the counter to stay upright, white-knuckled and gasping. "Think, Sarah. Think like the investigator you used to be. What does this mean?" The implications cascaded through my mind like dominoes falling. He filed a death certificate. That meant forgery, fraud, planning. He contacted our life insurance company. That meant he'd collected money, my money taken out on my life. He told people I was dead. That meant he was already living in a world where I didn't exist. But I was alive. I was standing here, breathing, thinking, existing, which meant either this was a mistake, some horrible administrative error, or Michael had decided to make his lie eventually come true. "Mommy, you look weird," Emma said, tugging at my shirt. "Do you need to lie down?" Yes. No, I didn't know. I sent Emma to play in the backyard, watched her skip out through the sliding glass door, oblivious to the earthquake happening inside our home. Then I did what I should have done weeks ago. I started searching. Michael's home office was just off the kitchen, a small room he kept locked when he wasn't working. "Client confidentiality," he'd always said. But the key was in the junk drawer where we kept everything. Batteries, rubber bands, spare keys. My fingers fumbled with the lock, my breath coming in short gasps. The door swung open. His desk was obsessively organized. Files in labeled folders, pens in a cup, computer monitor dark and silent. I started with the filing cabinet, pulling drawers with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Insurance. That's what I needed. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind, that this wasn't the pain medications making me paranoid. Third drawer down in a folder marked Estate Documents, I found it. My death certificate. Official Texas Department of State Health Services form, complete with a physician's signature, cause of death listed as complications from motor vehicle accident. Date of death, March 18th. 3 days after my accident, while I was unconscious in the ICU. The signature at the bottom was supposedly from Dr. Helena Rodriguez, one of the ER physicians who'd treated me. But I remembered Dr. Rodriguez. I remembered her kind eyes, her competent hands, her voice saying, "You're going to make it through this." This was a forgery. A good one. Michael must have paid someone with skill, but a forgery nonetheless. I would know. I'd seen hundreds of them in my old job. Behind it, clipped together with a binder clip, were more documents. The life insurance claim form, submitted 2 weeks after my death. Request for expedited payout due to financial hardship. Beneficiary, Michael Chen, amount $500,000, and then, paperclip to that, a bank statement showing the deposit, received and processed 30 days ago. He'd collected $500,000 by declaring me dead. I sank into his office chair, the papers clutched in my shaking hands. The room spun. My stomach heaved, and I barely made it to the trash can before vomiting. The sound was harsh and wet in the quiet office. When I finished, I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and kept searching. Because if he'd done this, what else had he done? The answer was everything. I found emails buried in his trash folder. He thought he'd deleted them, but hadn't emptied the trash. Correspondence with a contact at a funeral home about keeping costs down for cremation. Messages to our life insurance company asking about payout timelines. A draft email to my employer's HR department. My wife Sarah passed away from injuries sustained in her accident. Please forward information about survivor benefits. He'd been so thorough, so careful. Planning each step while sitting beside my hospital bed, while holding my hand, while telling me he loved me. The realization of how he'd set this up made my skin crawl. The guest bedroom wasn't for my convenience, it was for my isolation. The "you're too tired for visitors" wasn't protection, it was control. The pills he brought me each morning and night in that little cup, I'd trusted him, swallowed them obediently, wondered why I always felt so foggy, so confused, so unable to think clearly. He was drugging me, keeping me compliant, telling everyone I was too impaired for visits, too fragile for phone calls. And I'd believed him because he was my husband, because I was weak and hurting and dependent. I stumbled back to his filing cabinet, pulled out more folders with desperate urgency, financial records, credit card statements, and there, hidden in a folder marked business expenses, I found the other piece of the puzzle: gambling debts. $300,000 owed to something called Riverside Capital Management, a name I recognized from my fraud investigation days as a front for loan sharks. Payment deadlines marked in red. Threatening letters with language that made my blood run cold. Final notice before escalation. We know where your family lives. Interest compounds daily. He'd been gambling, probably for years, probably hiding it behind those client meetings and business trips. And now he was drowning in debt to dangerous people, the kind of people who don't accept bankruptcy, who don't go through legal channels, who solve problems with violence. So he'd found a solution: kill his wife, on paper, first, in reality later, collect the insurance money, pay off his debts, start fresh with a tragic story about the devoted husband who lost everything. The phone in his office rang, shrill and sudden. I jumped, my heart hammering. The caller ID showed Riverside Capital. I didn't answer. It rang 8 times before going to voicemail. A man's voice, rough and impatient. "Chen, this is your last courtesy call. Payment is due Friday. Don't make us come find you." Friday. That was 3 days from now. I understood then, with crystal clarity, what was about to happen. The timeline he was working with, the pressure he was under. He needed me gone, really gone, not just legally dead, before those people came calling, before anyone started asking too many questions about how he'd paid them off. I heard his car in the driveway, the garage door grinding open. Michael was home. My heart seized. I shoved everything back into the folders with clumsy, panicked movements, locked the office door behind me, dropped the key back in the junk drawer, grabbed my walker from where I'd left it in the hallway, made it to the guest bedroom just as I heard his footsteps in the kitchen. "Sarah? Emma?" His voice was cheerful, normal, the voice of a loving husband and father. "I'm home!" I lay down on the hospital bed, arranged myself in the position he expected, weak, docile, helpless. My whole body shook. I bit down on my fist to keep from screaming. The man I'd loved for 15 years, the father of my child, was planning to murder me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house settling made me flinch. Every footstep in the hallway sent my heart racing. Michael had brought me dinner on a tray, chicken soup and crackers prepared with the same care he'd shown for months. He'd sat on the edge of my bed, spoon-feeding me because my hands weren't steady enough yet, and I'd had to force myself not to vomit as I swallowed. "You seem agitated tonight," he'd said, studying my face with those dark eyes I used to find so comforting. "Maybe we should increase your pain medication, help you rest better." Translation: drug you more heavily so you can't think straight, can't fight back, can't scream when the time comes. "I'm fine," I'd managed to say, "just tired." After he left, I lay there in the darkness, listening to him move around upstairs, the shower running, the TV turning on in our bedroom, his bedroom now, I supposed. The house I'd thought was a sanctuary had become a prison. The man I'd trusted with my life was the warden planning my execution. Physical escape wasn't an option, not yet. My legs were still weak, my pelvis still healing. I could walk short distances with the walker, but running? Driving? Impossible. And where would I go? If I called 911, what would I say? My husband filed a death certificate? They'd think I was confused from the medications, suffering from post-traumatic stress. Michael was a respected financial advisor, a pillar of the community, the devoted husband who'd stood by his injured wife. I was the woman who'd spent 3 months in a hospital bed, who couldn't even walk to the bathroom alone, who took enough pain pills to stock a pharmacy. Who would they believe? Emma was asleep down the hall in her room, innocent and trusting, having no idea that her father was a monster. That thought terrified me more than anything. If I confronted Michael, if I made a mistake, what would happen to her? Would he hurt her too? Use her against me? I couldn't risk it. I had to be smart, strategic. I had to use the skills I'd spent years developing. The investigator's mind I'd thought I'd left behind when I became a corporate marketer. Most importantly, I had to stop taking the pills he was giving me. That realization crystallized everything. The fog I'd been living in for months, the confusion, the exhaustion, the inability to focus, wasn't just from the injuries. It was from whatever he was putting in those little white pills he brought me twice daily. The ones he said were for pain and inflammation, but that made my thoughts swim and my memories blur. Starting tomorrow, I wouldn't swallow them. I'd hide them, fake it, do whatever I had to do to clear my head. Because here's what Michael didn't know, what he couldn't know. I wasn't as weak as he thought. The physical therapy I'd been doing in private, the extra exercises when he wasn't watching, the determination to heal faster than anyone expected was paying off. My legs were getting stronger. My mind, once the drugs wore off, would be sharper. And I had resources. That $800,000 sitting in accounts he didn't know existed. My old contacts from the insurance fraud investigation world, people who owed me favors, who knew how these schemes worked, who could help me build a case. My own expertise in documenting fraud, in gathering evidence, in building prosecutions that destroyed people's lives. Michael thought he was hunting a wounded deer. He had no idea he'd trapped a wolf. Around 2 a.m., when I was sure he was asleep, I got up from the bed. My movements were slow, careful. I'd been faking more weakness than I actually had for the past 2 weeks, pretending I needed the walker more than I did. It was a trick I'd learned almost by accident. If Michael thought I was more helpless, he relaxed his guard. He didn't hover as much. He didn't watch me as carefully. I made my way to the guest bathroom, closed the door silently. In the mirror, my reflection looked haunted. Dark circles under my eyes, hollow cheeks, skin pale as paper. But underneath the weakness, I saw something else. A hardness in my gaze, a steel in my jaw. The woman I used to be, the fraud investigator who'd taken down criminals smarter and more connected than Michael, was still there, waiting to emerge. I opened the medicine cabinet where Michael kept my supplies, found the bottles of pills he gave me. The labels said oxycodone for pain, but I knew better now. I unscrewed one bottle, dumped half the pills into my hand, and flushed them down the toilet. Then I refilled the bottle with white Tylenol tablets from my old stash, hidden behind the tampons he'd never think to check. Perfect substitutes. Same size, same color. He'd never know the difference. Tomorrow, when he brought me my morning dose, I'd palm the pills, pretend to swallow, hide them in my cheek until he left. I'd done it once as a test tonight, and it had worked. He hadn't noticed. He was too confident, too sure of his control. That was his first mistake. Back in bed, I let myself think through the timeline. 3 days until Michael's debt payment was due. How long after that would he wait to stage my death? A week? 2? I needed to move faster than he did. I needed to contact my old colleague Tom from the insurance fraud division, the one who taught me everything about building airtight cases. I needed to document everything I'd found today. I needed to protect Emma. Most of all, I needed Michael to believe nothing had changed, that I was still the helpless victim, the trusting wife, the woman too broken to see what was right in front of her face. Let him believe it. Let him feel safe, confident, in control. Let him think he'd won. Because the moment his guard dropped completely, the moment he thought victory was assured, that's when I'd strike. Not with violence, not with emotion, but with cold, calculated precision. I'd use every legal tool available, every piece of evidence I could gather, every connection I had in law enforcement and insurance investigation. I'd destroy him so completely that he'd wish he'd never even thought my name. Michael wanted to make me disappear? Fine. I'd become a ghost. But not the kind that fades away, the kind that haunts you forever, that tears apart everything you tried to build on my grave. He thought he was dealing with a victim. He had no idea he'd created his own executioner. The first morning I didn't swallow Michael's pills was both terrifying and exhilarating. He brought them at 7 a.m. like clockwork, right after Emma left for school. 2 white tablets in a small paper cup, glass of water in his other hand, that concerned husband expression on his face. "Here you go, honey," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. "These will help with the pain." I took the cup, raised it to my lips, tilted my head back. The pills touched my tongue, bitter, chemical. But instead of swallowing, I tucked them into the pocket of my cheek, the way I'd practiced the night before with Tylenol. Then I took a long drink of water, let him see my throat move as I swallowed. Easy, natural. "Good girl," he murmured, and the condescension in his voice made my skin crawl. "You rest now. I'll check on you at lunch." The moment his footsteps faded up the stairs, I spat the pills into my hand. They were partially dissolved, leaving a foul taste in my mouth, but I'd done it. I wrapped them in a tissue, buried them at the bottom of the trash can under used Kleenex and cotton balls. Evidence hidden. Small victory number 1. Over the next 3 days, as the drugs worked their way out of my system, the fog began to lift. It was like watching the world come into focus after years of looking through dirty glass. My thoughts sharpened. My memory improved. The exhaustion that had plagued me for months started to recede. By day 4, I could think clearly for the first time since the accident, and what I thought was, I need evidence, mountains of it, the kind that would stand up in court, that would convince skeptical police officers and prosecutors, that would destroy Michael's credibility before he could spin his tragic widower story. I started with Emma's old tablet. She'd gotten a new one for her birthday and left the old iPad mini in a drawer in my room, forgotten. I charged it overnight, then spent hours figuring out how to turn it into a surveillance camera. A quick Google search, Michael never thought to monitor my internet usage, another mistake, led me to apps that turned tablets into hidden cameras. I downloaded one called Alfred, positioned the tablet on the bookshelf facing the door. Partially hidden behind a framed photo of Emma at her kindergarten graduation. The camera had a perfect view of anyone who entered my room, and it recorded everything. The recording started immediately. That first day, I caught Michael entering my room when I was supposedly asleep, rifling through the drawer of my nightstand. Looking for what? My phone? Money? Evidence that I suspected him? His face on the screen was cold, calculating. Nothing like the concerned husband he played when I was watching. But the real discovery came 3 days later. I'd positioned myself in the bathroom, door cracked just enough to hear, when Michael's phone rang. He was in my room checking my progress with the physical therapy exercises he thought I was doing. I heard him answer, his voice dropping to that intimate tone I used to think was reserved for me. "Hey, beautiful. No, I can't talk long. She's right here." Pause. "Jessica, baby, I told you. Just a few more weeks. Once everything's settled, we're free. The beach house, remember? You, me, and all that insurance money. She's so out of it, she doesn't suspect a thing." Jessica, his secretary. The pretty blonde I'd met at his office Christmas party, who'd smiled at me with those perfectly white teeth and said, "Michael talks about you all the time." The betrayal hit fresh, even though I should have expected it. Of course there was another woman. There's always another woman when a man decides his wife is disposable. I started recording every phone call after that using the tablet's microphone. The things I heard made my blood boil and my resolve strengthen in equal measure. "She's so brain damaged from the accident she can't even remember what day it is," Michael told Jessica during one call. "The doctors say she'll never be the same. It's actually a mercy what I'm doing. She'd hate living like this." A mercy. He was calling my murder a mercy. "Are you sure the life insurance will pay out?" Jessica asked. "What if they investigate?" "They already did their investigation. Paid out 30 days after I filed the claim. $500,000, baby. Plus her pension death benefits, the equity loan on the house, her 401k. We're looking at close to $1 million total. We'll be set for life." I recorded it all. Every word. Every plan. Every casual discussion of my death like I was already gone. 2 weeks into my intelligence gathering, I made contact with the outside world. Michael had taken my phone for safekeeping after I came home from the hospital, claiming I kept losing it. But I'd remembered the old iPhone 7 I'd kept in a box in the closet, my previous phone before upgrading. I dug it out from under winter coats, charged it in the bathroom outlet while Michael was at work, and activated it using our Wi-Fi. The first person I called was Tom Rodriguez, my old colleague from the insurance fraud investigation unit. We'd worked together for 5 years, had taken down dozens of fraud operations, had shared countless late nights poring over financial documents and building cases. If anyone would believe me, it was Tom. He answered on the third ring. "Rodriguez." "Tom, it's Sarah Chen." My voice shook despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Silence. Then, "Sarah? Holy shit. We heard you died. Michael sent out an email months ago, said you passed away from complications from your accident. There was a memorial service and everything." "I'm alive, Tom, and I need your help." I heard him take a sharp breath. "What the hell is going on?" I told him everything. The overheard phone call from Emma, the death certificate, the life insurance fraud, the pills, the affair, Michael's gambling debts, his plan to make his lie permanent. Tom listened without interrupting, his silence more powerful than any words. When I finished, he said quietly, "Sarah, this is federal. Wire fraud, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. We're talking multiple agencies, FBI, IRS, State Insurance Fraud Division. How much evidence do you have?" The forged death certificate, bank statements showing the insurance payout, recordings of him discussing the fraud with his mistress, and I found out he's also claimed my pension death benefits and my Social Security survivor benefits. He's been systematic. Good. That's good. The more agencies he's defrauded, the more charges we can bring. But Sarah, his voice dropped. If he's planning to actually kill you, we need to move carefully. We need him to feel safe enough to make a mistake, but we can't let him get close enough to actually hurt you. Can you stay safe for a few more weeks while we build the case? I don't have a choice, I said. If I run now, he'll know I'm on to him. He might disappear, take Emma, and I'll never see my daughter again. I need this airtight before I make my move. Okay, I'm pulling in some people I trust. FBI white-collar division, a prosecutor from the AG's office. We'll need copies of everything you've got. Can you document without him knowing? I'm already doing it. Smart. Always knew you were the best investigator I ever worked with. A pause. Sarah, be careful. If he's desperate enough to kill you once, he won't hesitate to do it again if he figures out you're onto him. I know. That's why I need to be smarter than him. After I hung up, I sat in the bathroom for a long time, letting the reality sink in. I had allies now, professionals who knew how to build prosecutions, who had the authority to bring Michael down. But Tom was right. I had to be careful. One wrong move, one hint that I was playing him, and everything could go sideways. The other ally came from an unexpected place. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen. No relation to Michael despite sharing a last name, she was a 72-year-old Chinese immigrant who'd lived next door for 8 years. We'd always been friendly, trading recipes and watching each other's houses during vacations. But since my accident, I hadn't seen her. She came to visit 2 weeks into my evidence gathering, arriving with a container of homemade dumplings while Michael was at work. I was in the living room practicing walking with my walker when the doorbell rang. "Sarah?" Her voice carried through the door. "It's Margaret Chen from next door. I brought food." I opened the door, and the concern on her weathered face was immediate. "Oh, child, you look so thin. They told me you were recovering, but nobody said you looked like this." I invited her in. Grateful for genuine human contact that wasn't manipulative or dangerous. We sat in the kitchen, and she watched me eat her dumplings with the intense satisfaction of someone who shows love through food. "Your husband," she said carefully after I'd finished 3 dumplings, "he told everyone in the neighborhood you passed away, said there was a service that you were cremated, but then I see lights on in the house at strange hours. I see him bringing groceries, too many groceries for a widower and a child, and last week I saw you through the window." My heart stopped. "Mrs. Chen." I said nothing. She reached across the table and gripped my hand with surprising strength. In my country, during the Cultural Revolution, I learned to see things and say nothing. I learned to recognize when someone is in danger. You are in danger. Yes? I could have lied, should have lied, but something in her knowing eyes made me tell the truth. "Yes." She nodded, unsurprised. "What do you need?" "Evidence, witnesses, someone who will testify that they saw him acting strangely, that he lied about my death, that something was wrong. When the time comes, I will testify. I will write down everything I see, every day with dates and times. In my country, we learn documentation saves lives." She squeezed my hand once more. "You are not alone, child. You have a warrior's spirit. I see it in your eyes." After she left, I added her name to my growing list of allies. Tom Rodriguez, FBI contacts, and now Mrs. Chen. Each person was a thread in the net I was weaving around Michael, invisible but strong. By the end of the second week, I had hours of recordings. Michael and Jessica planning their future on my money. Michael on the phone with his bookie, desperately trying to extend his payment deadline. Michael in my room, going through my things, muttering to himself, "Where is it? Where did she put it?" And then, the piece that made everything click into place. Emma, sitting on my bed after school, swinging her legs and chattering about her day. "Daddy said we're going to move to a beach house soon," she announced happily. "He said it's going to be somewhere warm with a pool and a big backyard. He said Mommy would want us to be happy, even if she's not there anymore." My blood turned to ice. "When did Daddy say this, sweetheart?" "Yesterday. He was talking to his friend on the phone, the pretty lady with the yellow hair who works at his office." Emma paused, confused. "Daddy said you were going to go away soon and it would just be us 3. But you're not going away, right, Mommy? You're getting better." I pulled her into a hug so she wouldn't see the rage and fear on my face. "I'm not going anywhere, baby. I promise." But Michael's timeline was now clear. He was telling our daughter I'd be gone soon. He'd already bought a beach house, probably with the insurance money. He was planning a future that didn't include me, couldn't include me because I'd be dead. The clock was ticking faster than I'd thought. That night, I organized everything I had. 53 video recordings, 72 audio files, photographs of documents, detailed notes with timestamps. I encrypted it all and uploaded copies to 3 different cloud storage accounts Michael didn't know existed. Then I sent a compressed file to Tom Rodriguez with a simple message: "Everything so far, more to come." His response came 2 minutes later: "Building the case, you're doing great, stay safe." 2 weeks of intelligence gathering. 2 weeks of watching my husband plot my murder while pretending to be the devoted caregiver. 2 weeks of gathering the rope I'd eventually use to hang him with. But I needed more. I needed to push him, test him, make him reveal the full extent of his plans. It was time to move into phase 2. The realization that Michael had access to all our joint accounts gnawed at me. If he'd filed for life insurance death benefits, what else had he claimed? I needed to know the full extent of the fraud before I could stop it, and more importantly, I needed to protect the one asset he didn't know about. My secret inheritance. $800,000 that had grown to just over $1 million with careful investing over the years. Money that existed in accounts under my maiden name, Sarah Morrison, at a small credit union Michael had never heard of. Money that would save my life and Emma's future. But I needed to move it somewhere he could never find it, even if he somehow discovered it existed. At 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night, 3 weeks into my investigation, I slipped out of bed and made my way to the kitchen. My legs were stronger now. The combination of not being drugged and the secret physical therapy exercises I did every night when Michael was asleep had paid off. I could walk without the walker for short distances, though I still used it when he was watching. I opened my hidden phone and logged into my accounts. The familiar screen glowed in the darkness. Morrison Credit Union. Savings account. Balance. $1,047,392.18. More than $1 million that represented my grandmother's life work, my own careful investments, and years of compound interest. I started transferring. Small amounts at first, $50,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands that Tom had helped me set up through his FBI contacts. Legal, reportable, but untraceable by Michael. Then another $50,000 to a different account in Switzerland. Then $100,000 to a trust I'd established in Emma's name, inaccessible until she turned 18. By 4 a.m., I'd moved $847,000 to protected accounts, leaving just $200,000 in the original credit union as a safety net. If Michael somehow discovered these accounts, he'd find them nearly empty. And if I needed quick cash for lawyers or to disappear, I had access to funds he could never touch. Small victory number 2. But as I worked, securing my financial future, Tom's words echoed in my mind. We need to know the full extent of the fraud. So I started digging deeper into Michael's activities, using the financial investigation skills I'd honed over years of tracking down fraud artists. I hacked into his email account first. Easy. His password was Emma2015, our daughter's name and birth year. Security question. Mother's maiden name? Answer, Wong. I was in his digital life within 5 minutes. What I found made my hands shake with rage. He hadn't just filed for my life insurance, he'd filed for everything. My pension death benefits from my old employer, $187,000 lump sum payout. Status, approved and paid out. Social Security survivor benefits. He'd filed paperwork claiming I died, requesting benefits for himself and Emma. Status, under review, my 401k, death distribution, $94,000. Status, paid out. House refinancing, he'd forged my signature on documents to take out a $200,000 home equity line of credit on our house. The house we'd bought together that I'd made the down payment on with money from my first big bonus. Status, approved, funds dispersed. The math was staggering. Close to $1.2 million he'd collected or tried to collect by declaring me dead, and that didn't include the money he'd been slowly draining from our joint checking and savings accounts, another $45,000 that had disappeared in the months since my accident. He'd systematically stripped our financial life bare. Preparing to walk away with everything while I was supposedly in the ground. but the email that made my blood run coldest was one buried in his deleted items folder, sent to someone named Verify Docs LLC. Need final documents prepared for March 30th. Customer already paid 50% deposit. Death certificate worked perfectly. Insurance company never questioned it. We'll need same quality work for the medical examiner's report. Timeline is critical. Remainder of payment upon delivery. March 30th. That was 3 weeks away. He'd hired someone to forge a medical examiner's report, which meant he was planning to stage my death so it would look natural, accidental, like a complication from my injuries that no one would question, and he'd already paid for the forged paperwork that would make it official. I screenshotted everything, saved it to my encrypted cloud storage, and sent copies to Tom with a message. He's planning it for March 30th. We have 3 weeks. Tom's response came fast. We'll be ready. Keep gathering evidence. We need him to feel confident to make mistakes. The next day, Michael tested me. I should have expected it, but the cruelty of it still caught me off guard. He came into my room mid-morning when I was supposedly doing physical therapy exercises. His face was pleasant, concerned, but his eyes were calculating. Hey, honey, can I ask you something? I looked up from the resistance band I was pulling, making my expression vacant and trusting. Of course. Do you remember what today is? My mind raced. What was today? March 8th. Our anniversary was in June. Emma's birthday in October. His birthday in January. What was significant about March 8th? Tuesday? I said, letting confusion cloud my voice. He smiled and I saw relief flicker across his face. That's right, it's Tuesday. I just wondered if you remembered. The doctors said your memory might be affected. It was a test. He was checking how impaired I really was, whether the drugs were working, whether I was aware enough to be a threat. I'd passed by playing dumb, by giving him exactly what he wanted to see. After he left, I looked up March 8th in my phone's calendar. Nothing significant, which meant he was just testing me randomly, looking for signs I was faking. I needed to be more careful, but I also needed to maintain my cover, which meant creating believable, confused moments that would convince him I was still helpless. That evening, I arranged the kitchen wrong, put the milk in the pantry instead of the fridge. When Michael found it hours later, he called me in, his voice dripping with false concern. Sarah, honey, did you put the milk here? I stared at the pantry shelf, let my brow furrow in confusion. I thought the milk went there. Doesn't it? No, sweetie. The milk goes in the refrigerator, remember? He spoke slowly, like I was a child. We've talked about this. Your memory is still affected by the accident. I'm sorry, I whispered, and I let real tears come, not from shame, but from rage at having to play this role. I forget things sometimes. He hugged me, and I felt his relief in the way his muscles relaxed. It's okay. That's why I'm here, to take care of you. You just focus on resting and getting better, okay? Translation. Stay drugged. Stay confused. Stay helpless until I'm ready to kill you. Confrontation. Point 1 had been passed. He'd tested me. I'd performed perfectly, and his confidence had grown. Good. Let him feel safe. Let him think his plan was working flawlessly. Meanwhile, at night, when he thought I was asleep, I was getting stronger. I'd started with simple exercises, leg lifts, arm stretches, core work. My body remembered what it used to be capable of. Before the accident, I'd been a runner, doing 5Ks every Saturday morning. The muscle memory was still there, buried under months of atrophy but not gone. Now, 3 weeks into my secret rehabilitation, I could do 50 squats, 30 push-ups, hold a plank for 2 minutes. My legs no longer trembled when I walked. My arms had regained their strength. I was nowhere near my pre-accident fitness, but I was strong enough to defend myself, strong enough to run if I needed to, strong enough to fight back. I practiced in the dark, in my room, moving silently so Michael wouldn't hear, Every squat was preparation. Every push-up was revenge deferred. Every plank was a promise. He would not win this. But Emma was sensing the tension. Children always do, even when you try to hide it from them. She started having nightmares. I'd hear her crying at 3 a.m. and I'd go to her room, moving with my walker for the cameras I suspected Michael had installed, though I hadn't found them yet, and hold her while she sobbed. "Daddy's different now," she whispered one night, her small body shaking against mine. "He's always angry. And he looks at you weird, Mommy, like he doesn't like you anymore." My heart broke, for her innocence shattered. "Sometimes grown-ups go through difficult times," I said carefully, knowing I had to plant seeds without revealing too much. "Sometimes people aren't who they seem to be, but I promise you, Emma, I will always protect you. Always." "Even from Daddy?" The question hung in the air like smoke. How do you tell a 9-year-old that her father is a monster? That the man who reads her bedtime stories and helps with her homework is planning to murder her mother? "I'll protect you from anything and anyone," I said instead. "No matter what. Do you trust me?" She nodded against my shoulder. "I trust you, Mommy." "Good. Then I need you to do something for me. If anything ever feels wrong, if Daddy ever scares you, or if something happens to me, you call Aunt Rachel, okay? You have her number memorized?" Emma recited my sister's phone number perfectly. Smart girl. My smart, beautiful girl who deserved better than a father who valued money over life. "And Emma, this is our secret, okay? Don't tell Daddy we talked about this." She nodded solemnly. "Okay, Mommy." As I tucked her back into bed, I made a decision. Emma couldn't be here when this went down. When Michael made his move, when the FBI arrested him, when everything exploded, my daughter needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't use her as leverage or hurt her to hurt me. I texted my sister Rachel the next day from my hidden phone. "Need a favor. Can Emma come visit you for spring break? Michael and I need time to work on things. I'll explain later." Rachel's response: "Of course. She's always welcome. Sarah, is everything okay?" "It will be. Soon." 2 days later, I suggested to Michael that Emma might enjoy visiting her aunt for a week during spring break. "She hasn't seen Rachel in months," I said, making my voice dreamy and vague. "It might be nice for her to get away." Michael's eyes lit up. "That's actually a great idea. I was thinking we needed some time alone to focus on your recovery. Let me call Rachel." What he didn't say: "Perfect. Emma will be gone when I stage your death. No witness, no complications." What I didn't say: "By the time you make your move, Emma will be safe. I'll have enough evidence to bury you, and the FBI will be watching your every move." Spring break was March 28th, 2 days before his planned date of March 30th. The pieces were all falling into place. With Emma's safety arranged and my assets protected, it was time to start dismantling Michael's plans from the inside. Not overtly, I couldn't let him know I was onto him, but subtly, strategically, I could start introducing chaos into his carefully orchestrated scheme. The IRS was my first weapon. Michael had collected over $1 million in death benefits, life insurance, pension payout, 401k distribution, and as far as I could tell from his tax documents, which I'd photographed when he left them on his desk, he hadn't reported any of it. Life insurance death benefits are usually tax-free, but only if the insured is actually dead. Fraudulently obtained funds, those are taxable income. And penalties for tax fraud? Crippling. Using a burner email account set up through a VPN, I sent an anonymous tip to the IRS. Michael Chen of Austin. Texas received over $1 in death benefits for wife Sarah Morrison Chen in 2024. Benefits were paid based on fraudulent death certificate. Wife is alive. Recommend investigation of unreported income and insurance fraud. I included copies of the insurance payout documents I'd photographed, the forged death certificate, and bank statements showing the deposits. Then I hit send and waited. The IRS moves slowly, but when they move, they're thorough. Within a week, Michael received a letter. Notice of audit for tax year 2024. Please provide documentation for all income sources. I was in the living room when he opened it, using my walker to slowly cross from the couch to the kitchen. His face went white, then red, then purple. "What the fuck?" he muttered, staring at the letter. "Everything okay, honey?" I asked, my voice concerned and vacant. "Fine. Just work stuff." He crumpled the letter and threw it in the trash, but I saw his hands shaking. Small victory number 3. That night, he called Jessica in a panic. I listened through the baby monitor I'd hidden in his office, recording every word. "They're auditing me. The IRS. They're asking about my income sources." "So? Just give them your tax returns." Jessica's voice was annoyed. "You're freaking out over nothing." "You don't understand. The life insurance money, I didn't report it. I thought it was tax-free, but if they start digging, if they contact the insurance company, they'll find out." "Find out what?" Silence. Then, "Nothing. Never mind, I'll handle it." "Michael, you're scaring me. What did you do?" "I said I'll handle it." His voice rose to a shout. "Just give me some space, okay? I have a lot going on." The call ended with Jessica sounding suspicious and Michael sounding desperate. Perfect. Let the cracks begin to show. But I wasn't done with Jessica. She was a complication, but she was also a tool I could use. If I could make her doubt Michael, make her question whether she was just another victim in his schemes, she might become an ally instead of an enemy. The next day, I created another anonymous account and sent Jessica a text from a spoofed number. "Michael isn't who you think he is. Ask him about his wife. Ask him why she's still alive. Ask him what he's really planning to do with that money." I watched her through Michael's office window. He worked from home that day, and I could see his computer screen reflected in the glass. Her text response came 10 minutes later. "Who is this?" I didn't respond. Let her paranoia grow. Let her start asking questions. That evening, I heard them arguing in his office. The door was closed, but the baby monitor picked up everything. Some random number texted me about you, about your wife. "Michael, what the hell is going on?" "It's nothing. Probably some scam trying to get you to..." "They said Sarah's still alive." "Are you lying to me? Is she dead or not?" "Of course she's dead. Jesus, Jessica, I showed you the death certificate." "Then why would someone say she's alive? Unless..." Her voice dropped. "Oh my God, are you scamming me? Is this whole thing a scam?" "No, baby, no. I love you. We're going to be together, just like we planned." "I want to see her grave. Prove to me she's really dead." Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. Then Michael's voice, too smooth. "She was cremated. I scattered her ashes at her favorite beach. There is no grave." Convenient. The argument escalated, their voices rising until I heard something crash. Maybe a lamp, maybe a picture frame. Then Jessica stormed out, her heels clicking furiously on the hardwood as she left. Michael stayed in his office for another hour. I could hear him pacing, muttering to himself. When he finally came out, his face was haggard, eyes wild. "Sarah?" he called. "In here," I responded from the living room, my voice sleepy. I'd positioned myself on the couch, blanket over my legs, looking like I dozed off watching TV. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Did you hear anything? Any yelling?" I blinked slowly, confused. "Yelling? No, I was sleeping." "Why?" He relaxed slightly. "Nothing. Just a work call that got heated. Go back to sleep." But I could see the paranoia creeping in. His eyes kept darting to me, assessing, questioning. Was I faking? Did I know something? His confident control was starting to crack. Good. Let him worry. Let him make mistakes. Small victory. Number 4 came 3 days later when Jessica confronted him again, this time with evidence. Somehow, she'd dug into his background and found discrepancies. Maybe she'd hired a private investigator. Maybe she'd just done some basic Google searches. Either way, she arrived at our house while I was supposedly napping, and their argument shook the walls. "You told me you were divorced," she screamed. You said Sarah died, but you're still legally married. I checked the county records, Michael. There's no divorce filing. You're lying to me about everything. I can explain. Explain what? That you're a fraud? That you've been playing me this whole time? Oh my God, is Sarah really alive? Is this some sick insurance scam? Keep your voice down. She might hear. Who gives a shit if she hears? Michael, what have you gotten me into? I listened to every word through the monitor, my heart racing. Jessica was unraveling, which meant Michael was unraveling, which meant he might accelerate his timeline. I needed to be ready, but I also needed to document his growing desperation. That night, after he'd calmed Jessica down enough to send her home, I heard him on the phone with his gambling contacts. The conversation made my blood run cold. I need more time, just one more week. I'll have all your money by the end of the month, I swear. Pause. I know what I owe. $300,000 plus interest. I'm not an idiot. Longer pause. Don't threaten me. I have collateral. I have a plan. Just give me until March 30th. March 30th. His deadline for everything. Pay off the loan sharks, disappear with Jessica, start a new life on my money. All he needed was for me to be dead. The pieces were coming together. The pressure was mounting. Michael was making more mistakes, leaving more evidence. Tom and his FBI contacts were building a case file that would send Michael to prison for decades. But I needed to push him further. I needed him so desperate, so sloppy, that he'd reveal his full plan on tape. The kind of confession that would eliminate any possibility of him claiming ignorance or accident. So I started leaving small hints that I was more aware than I seemed. I'd move things slightly. His keys from where he left them on the counter to the coffee table. Photos he'd put face down would be right side up again. Documents he'd hidden would appear on top of his desk. Nothing obvious. Nothing he could directly confront me about. Just enough to make him wonder, is she faking? Does she know? I'd reference things I shouldn't remember. During dinner, I'd mention a restaurant we went to 2 months ago, then immediately look confused. Wait, did we go there? I can't remember. Sorry, my memory. His eyes would narrow. He'd study me like a specimen under glass. The psychological dismantling was working. I could see it in the way he watched me now, the way his paranoia grew with each small inconsistency. He was making mistakes, leaving his office unlocked, forgetting to delete emails, having conversations with Jessica where I could hear them. A month into my investigation, his stress was visible to anyone who cared to look. He'd lost weight. His hands shook when he thought no one was watching. He drank more. Whiskey at night, sometimes starting at 5 p.m. His temper was shorter with Emma, his patience with me nearly gone. Is she faking? He muttered to himself one night, standing in the doorway of my room while he thought I was asleep. No, impossible. She's too brain damaged. But then how? He couldn't reconcile the evidence in front of him, a wife who seemed helpless but somehow seemed to know things, to move things, to watch him with eyes that maybe weren't as vacant as they should be. His world was fracturing, and I was the earthquake at its center. Time marker. 1 month in. 29 days since I first overheard Emma on the phone with the insurance company. 29 days of gathering evidence, building alliances, protecting assets, and watching my husband unravel under the weight of his own crimes. And I still had his endgame to document, the actual murder attempt. The moment when he'd try to give me the fatal overdose he'd planned. The moment when his intent would be crystal clear, recorded, and undeniable. March 30th was 10 days away. 10 days until Michael made his final move. 10 days until I destroyed him completely. The breaking point between Michael and Jessica came exactly 1 week before his planned date of March 30th. I'd continued sending Jessica anonymous messages, carefully crafted to exploit her insecurities and fears. He told his wife the same things he tells you, how special you are, how you're his future. Check his browser history, see who else he's talking to. The insurance payout was $500K. Where's your cut? Or were you always just a distraction? He's married. His wife is alive. You're an accomplice to fraud. When this crashes down, you're going to prison too." That last message did it. The next morning, Jessica showed up at our house unannounced. I was in the kitchen making oatmeal with deliberately slow, shaky movements when the doorbell rang. Michael was upstairs in the shower. I opened the door to find Jessica standing there, eyes red from crying, mascara smudged. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost, which, in a way, she was. "You're Sarah?" she whispered. "Yes." I kept my voice steady, clear. "And you're Jessica." "You're supposed to be dead," Michael said. She stopped, realization dawning across her face. Oh my God, he lied about everything. This was it. The moment when the villains turned on each other. I could either send her away and let Michael smooth things over, or I could turn her into the weapon that would destroy him. I chose the latter. "Come in," I said quietly. "We need to talk before he gets out of the shower." She followed me into the kitchen, her legs trembling. Up close, I could see she was young, maybe 28, barely older than I'd been when I married Michael. Pretty in that carefully maintained way some women achieve, all highlighted hair and perfect nails and anxiety masked by makeup. "How long have you been seeing my husband?" I asked. 18 months. Her voice was barely audible. "He told me his wife died in March, that he was a widower, that we were going to be together, start fresh somewhere new." "Florida," I said, "beach house." "He told you he'd inherit money from my death benefits." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know you were alive. He showed me a death certificate. He took me to a memorial service. There were flowers and everything." A memorial service. The audacity of it made me want to laugh and scream simultaneously. He forged the death certificate, he faked the service, and he collected over $1 million in fraudulent death benefits. "You've been dating a con artist, Jessica." "But I didn't know. I would never—" She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. "I'm an accessory, aren't I? Those texts said I could go to prison. Oh God, what do I do?" This was the moment when I could either destroy her or use her. Tom's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes the best witnesses are the ones with the most to lose. "You can help me stop him," I said quietly. "You can wear a wire, get him to confess to his plan, work with the FBI. They'll give you immunity in exchange for testimony. You'll be a cooperating witness, not a co-conspirator." She looked up at me, hope and terror fighting for dominance on her face. "Why would you help me? I slept with your husband." "Because I'm not going to let him hurt anyone else. Because my daughter's future matters more than revenge against you. And because—" I leaned closer. "If you don't help me, you will go to prison. Accessory to insurance fraud, conspiracy, possibly attempted murder. Is that what you want?" "No." The word came out as a whisper. "No, I'll do it. I'll help. Just tell me what to do." I heard the shower turn off upstairs. We had maybe 5 minutes before Michael came down. "Leave now. Tell him you need space to think. Tonight, you're going to get a call from an FBI agent named Tom Rodriguez. You're going to agree to wear a wire, and tomorrow you're going to meet with Michael and ask him directly about his plans. Ask him what he's going to do with me. Ask him when I'm going to die. Get it all on tape." She nodded frantically. Okay. But Sarah, he's dangerous. What if he hurts you before—" "He won't get the chance," I said. "Just do your part. Get the confession. The rest is handled." Jessica left just as Michael's footsteps sounded on the stairs. When he came into the kitchen, still damp from the shower, I was stirring my oatmeal with vacant concentration. "Was someone here?" he asked. "I thought I heard the doorbell." "I don't think so," I said slowly. "Maybe I imagined it. I imagine a lot of things lately." He studied me, but saw only what he wanted to see. A brain-damaged wife, too impaired to be a threat. "Yeah, maybe you did." That evening, Tom called Jessica exactly as promised. I don't know what he said to her, but whatever it was, convinced her completely. The next day, she arrived at our house wearing a wire under her blouse, a tiny device the FBI had given her, recording every word. I watched from my bedroom through the window as she and Michael talked in his car in the driveway. They thought they had privacy there. They had no idea I had Tom on speed dial, listening to the live feed from Jessica's wire. "Michael, I need to know the truth," Jessica said. The FBI had coached her well. Her voice was steady, firm. "Is Sarah really dead?" Silence. Then, "What kind of question is that? Just answer me. Is she dead? Baby, we've been over this. I want to hear you say it. Is she dead?" More silence. Then, in a voice that made my skin crawl, "Not yet. Not yet." Those two words were a confession, an admission, a smoking gun. Jessica's voice shook slightly as she pushed further. "What does that mean, not yet?" "It means she's supposed to be dead, but she survived the accident. But it's fine. I have a plan. March 30th, it all gets handled. 1 more week and she'll really be gone. Accidental overdose. The medical examiner's report is already paid for. It'll look like she relapsed, took too many pills. No one will question it. You're going to kill her." It wasn't a question. "I'm going to finish what the accident started. She's already brain damaged, Jess. She doesn't even know what's happening. It's a mercy." There it was. Complete confession, intent, method, timeline, everything we needed. Jessica kept him talking for another 20 minutes, and he laid out the entire plan. How he'd increase my medication gradually until March 30th, then give me a fatal dose that night. How he'd find me unresponsive in the morning. How the paid-off medical examiner would rule it an accidental overdose. How we'd be free to move to Florida with the insurance money, my pension benefits, the house equity, everything. When the conversation ended and Jessica drove away, I watched Michael sit in the car alone for a long moment. His face was peaceful, satisfied. He thought he'd reassured her, brought her back into his plans. He had no idea he'd just sealed his own fate. Tom called me within minutes. "We got it. Full confession. Intent to murder, insurance fraud, conspiracy. Sarah, we have enough to arrest him right now." "Not yet," I said. "He mentioned trying to increase my medication. I want that on camera, too. I want every piece of evidence locked down so tight he can't breathe. Sarah, if he tries to actually hurt you, he won't succeed. Trust me." The next few days were a careful dance. Michael, feeling confident after his conversation with Jessica, started trying to increase my medication just like he'd said he would, but I was ready. Confrontation point 2 came on March 27th, 3 days before his planned date. He brought me my morning pills, but this time, there were 3 tablets instead of 2. "The doctor called," he said smoothly. "He thinks you need a higher dose. Your pain levels have been elevated." I stared at the pills in the little cup. 3? I usually only take 2. "Doctor's orders, honey. It'll help you feel better." I took the cup, raised it to my lips, and watched his eyes. They were eager, anticipatory. He wanted to see me take them, wanted to know the increased dose was working. So I pretended to swallow, tucked them in my cheek, and gave him what he wanted to see. But the moment he left, I spat them into my hand and examined them closely. 2 were the usual pills he'd been giving me, probably just enough sedative to keep me groggy. But the 3rd was different, larger, a different shade of white. I took a photo, sent it to Tom. His response came fast. "That's fentanyl, 100 millar, enough to kill someone your size. He's testing to see how much you can handle before the final dose." Michael was practicing murdering me, but now I had proof. Time-stamped video of him giving me a potentially lethal dose. His fingerprints on the pill bottle, everything. Meanwhile, Emma was safely at my sister Rachel's house in Dallas, 3 hours away. I'd sent her there 2 days early, claiming she was excited for spring break. Michael had been pleased. 1 less complication, 1 less witness. He had no idea I'd told Rachel everything, that Emma was under constant supervision, that if anything happened to me, Rachel had instructions to take Emma and run, to never let Michael near her again. My daughter was safe. My evidence was airtight. My allies were in position. Sarah's physical recovery was nearly complete now. In the privacy of my room at night, I could do 100 squats, 50 push-ups, run in place for 20 minutes without losing breath. I was ready, not just mentally, but physically ready for whatever came next. March 29th arrived. Tomorrow was Michael's planned date. Tonight he was agitated, nervous, making final preparations. I heard him on the phone with the forger. Everything ready for tomorrow night? Good. Payment on delivery. I heard him moving things around in the garage, probably preparing the scene, staging where he'd find my body. I heard him talking to Jessica. Tomorrow night, then we're free. I'll meet you at the beach house by Friday. New life, baby. Just like we planned. And through it all, I lay in my bed, eyes closed, breathing steady, playing the role of the helpless victim one final time. But underneath the facade, I was coiled like a spring, ready to release. Small victory number 5. Emma was safe, far from the coming storm. That was all that mattered. Everything else, the evidence, the arrests, the destruction of Michael's plans, was just cleanup now. Tom called at 11 p.m. FBI is ready, SWAT team on standby. But Sarah, are you sure you want to wait until he actually tries? We could arrest him now, tonight. No, I said quietly. I want him to try. I want there to be no doubt, no possibility of him claiming it was all a misunderstanding. I want attempted murder on top of everything else. I want him buried so deep he never sees daylight again. You're braver than anyone I've ever worked with, Tom said. But be careful. This man is desperate and dangerous. I'm counting on it. March 30th dawned cold and clear. Michael brought me breakfast in bed, unusually cheerful. Big day today, he said. I'm taking Emma to visit Rachel. Wait, she's already there, isn't she? My mind's been all over the place. Anyway, tonight's just you and me. Maybe we'll watch a movie, have a quiet evening. That sounds nice, I said, smiling vaguely. I love you, Sarah, he said, and the lie was so smooth, so practiced, that for a moment I could almost remember when those words had been true. I love you too, I replied, and unlike his, my words carried truth. Not love for him, but love for the justice I was about to deliver. He kissed my forehead, and I let him. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe this was his day of victory. Tonight, Michael Chen would try to murder his wife. Tonight, I would make sure he failed. And tomorrow, he'd wake up in a cell, facing decades in federal prison. His life destroyed as thoroughly as he'd tried to destroy mine. The end game was here. March 30th, 9:47 p.m. The house was quiet except for the sound of the TV playing in the living room, some mindless sitcom I'd pretended to watch for the past hour. Michael had been in the garage for 20 minutes, and I knew exactly what he was doing, preparing the fatal dose, gathering his supplies, steeling himself for murder. I sat on the couch, Walker positioned beside me like a prop I no longer needed, and felt my heart beating steady and strong in my chest. No fear, no trembling, just cold, crystalline clarity. Outside, in unmarked vehicles positioned at carefully calculated distances, FBI agents waited for my signal. Tom Rodriguez was 3 houses down, listening through the wire I wore taped between my shoulder blades. Jessica had given her testimony hours ago and was now in protective custody, her cooperation ensuring her freedom and Michael's destruction. Everything was in place. Every piece of evidence documented, time-stamped, legally obtained, every avenue of escape blocked, every lie exposed. All that remained was for Michael to take the final step, to cross the line from conspiracy to attempt, from planning to action. I heard the garage door open, his footsteps in the kitchen, the clink of glass. He was preparing something, probably mixing the fatal dose into a drink, making it easier to administer. He thought I'd swallow it willingly, trustingly, the way I'd swallowed everything else he'd given me for months. "Sarah?" he called out, his voice artificially cheerful. "I made you some warm milk. It'll help you sleep." Warm milk. How considerate. How caring. How perfectly in character for the devoted husband he'd been pretending to be. I stood up. Not with the walker. Not with the shuffling, uncertain movements he expected. I stood up smoothly, my legs strong beneath me, my core engaged, my balance perfect. 3 months of secret rehabilitation had rebuilt my body into something harder than it had been before the accident. The drugs he'd been giving me would have kept me weak, compliant, helpless. But I hadn't taken them, not for weeks, and every night while he slept, I'd been transforming myself from victim to weapon. I walked into the kitchen, really walked with confident strides, and watched his face as he registered what he was seeing. The confusion came first, his eyebrows drawing together. Then alarm, as his brain tried to reconcile the helpless woman he expected with the strong, clear-eyed woman standing before him. "Hello, Michael," I said, my voice steady and cold. "I'm not dead yet." His face went white. Actually white, like all the blood had drained straight to his feet. The mug of poisoned milk trembled in his hand, sloshing liquid onto the counter. "Sarah? What? You're supposed to be in bed? Drugged? Helpless?" I took a step closer. "I haven't taken your pills in weeks, Michael. Every single one you gave me, I faked swallowing them. Every confused moment, carefully calculated. Every stumble with the walker, performance. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? Did you forget what I used to do for a living?" Understanding dawned across his face, followed immediately by panic. He set the mug down, his hands rising in a placating gesture. "Honey, I don't know what you think you know, but you're confused. The accident, the medications. I know everything." I pulled out my phone, held it up so he could see the screen. "I know about the forged death certificate, the life insurance fraud, $500,000, the pension benefits, $187,000, the 401k distribution, $94,000, the house refinancing, $200,000 in equity you stole, Social Security fraud, tax evasion, and tonight's special, attempted murder with fentanyl, which you've been testing doses of for the past 3 days." His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. How did I know? I recorded everything, Michael. Every phone call, every conversation with Jessica, every meeting with your forger, every threat from your gambling contacts. I have 53 video recordings, 72 audio files, and enough documented evidence to put you away for the rest of your natural life. I gestured to the poisoned milk. "Including tonight. That drink you prepared? The FBI is testing a sample right now. We swapped it out 20 minutes ago while you were in the garage. You just tried to give your wife a lethal dose of fentanyl mixed with benzodiazepines. That's attempted murder, Michael." Something shifted in his expression. The panic morphed into rage, into the violent desperation of a cornered animal. I saw the change and was ready for it, had been ready for it for weeks. He lunged at me, hands reaching for my throat, his face twisted with fury and fear. But I'd spent 3 months healing, 3 months strengthening, 3 months preparing for this exact moment. I sidestepped his lunge, used his momentum against him, and drove my fist straight into his nose with every ounce of strength I'd rebuilt. Crack! The sound of breaking cartilage was sharp and satisfying. Blood exploded across his face as he stumbled backward, clutching his nose, shock replacing rage. "Those nighttime workouts paid off," I said calmly, shaking out my hand. "Did you know I've been doing 100 squats every night? 50 push-ups? 200 sit-ups? While you thought I was weak and helpless, I was getting strong enough to defend myself, strong enough to fight back." He tried to rush me again, blood streaming down his face, but his movements were clumsy, panicked. I grabbed the pepper spray I'd hidden under the kitchen towel and hit him straight in the eyes. He screamed, dropping to his knees, pawing at his face. "And here's the really beautiful part, Michael," I said, standing over him as he writhed on the floor. "Everything you tried to take from me, I'm keeping it. That $800,000 inheritance you never knew about, it's safely offshore in accounts you can't touch. But that $500,000 you stole from the life insurance company, you're paying it back, every penny from prison, where you'll be spending the next 25 years minimum." You can't." His voice was strangled, desperate. "Oh, I can. And I have. You want to know the best part? Jessica gave you up. Your girlfriend, your accomplice, your partner in fraud. She wore a wire for the FBI. She recorded you confessing everything. She's getting immunity for her testimony, and you're getting a cell in federal prison." I heard car doors slamming outside, heavy footsteps on the porch. Tom's voice calling, "FBI, search warrant!" The front door burst open. 6 agents in tactical gear flooded into the house, weapons drawn, moving with practiced precision. Tom was behind them, his face grim with satisfaction. "Michael Chen," Tom said, pulling out handcuffs, "you're under arrest for insurance fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, forgery, and about 15 other charges we're going to read you when you're in custody. You have the right to remain—" Michael's face crumpled as they hauled him to his feet, hands cuffed behind his back, blood and pepper spray streaking his face. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Sarah, please, I'm Emma's father. Think about her." "I am thinking about her," I said coldly, "which is why she's 3 hours away with my sister, safe from you, which is why I documented everything so thoroughly that there's no chance of you ever getting custody, ever seeing her unsupervised, ever hurting her the way you tried to hurt me. Emma deserves better than a father who's a con artist and attempted murderer, and now she'll have the chance to grow up knowing that justice exists, that the truth matters, that women don't have to stay victims." They dragged him toward the door. He was crying now, ugly sobs that shook his body. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah, I never wanted—" "You never wanted to get caught," I corrected. "That's different from being sorry. If that drunk driver hadn't hit me, if I'd died in the accident like you planned, you would have taken everything and moved on without a second thought. You declared me dead while I was still breathing, Michael. You erased me for money, and now you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that I won, that the woman you tried to bury came back and destroyed you." Tom paused at the door, looked back at me. "Sarah, you okay?" I flexed my hand. The knuckles were already starting to bruise from where I'd hit Michael's face. "I'm perfect. Never better." That was a hell of a punch. I had a good teacher. I smiled. An excellent motivation. They took Michael away in handcuffs, stuffed him into the back of an FBI vehicle where he couldn't hurt anyone ever again. I stood in the doorway of my house that he'd tried to steal, and watched the red taillights disappear into the night. The house was suddenly quiet. Just me and the evidence of the life we'd built together, the marriage that had been a lie, the family that had been broken by greed and betrayal. But underneath the ruins, I felt something new growing. Not just anger or satisfaction at his downfall, but purpose, clarity, strength. I'd been declared dead and had come back to life. I'd been drugged and had cleared my mind. I'd been victimized and had become my own savior. The woman Michael had tried to bury was gone, replaced by someone harder, sharper, more dangerous, someone who would make sure no one else suffered what I'd suffered, someone who knew that survival wasn't enough. You had to fight. You had to win. And I had won. The legal machinery moved swiftly once the FBI had Michael in custody. Federal prosecutors filed charges that read like a catalog of human greed and cruelty. Insurance fraud, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1033. Wire fraud, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1343. Conspiracy to commit murder, 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1117. Attempted murder under Texas state law, forgery, identity theft, tax evasion, and money laundering. Each charge carried years of prison time. Combined, Michael was looking at 25 years to life, with the federal sentencing guidelines offering no mercy for someone who'd attempted to murder his spouse for financial gain. His arraignment was a spectacle. The press had gotten wind of the case. Local financial advisor tried to murder wife after declaring her dead for insurance money, and the courthouse was packed with reporters. I attended, sitting in the front row where Michael couldn't avoid seeing me. He'd looked small in his orange jumpsuit, his nose bandaged from where I'd broken it, his eyes hollow with the realization that his life was over. His public defender tried to argue for bail. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Patricia Morales, shut that down immediately. Your Honor, the defendant has demonstrated flight risk, has access to fraudulently obtained funds, and has proven himself willing to murder to avoid consequences. He belongs in custody until trial. Bail denied. Michael was remanded to federal detention to await trial. Jessica Marquez, his former mistress and accomplice, had made a different choice. The moment the FBI offered her immunity in exchange for testimony, she'd taken it. Smart woman. She gave them everything: dates, conversations, text messages, emails. Her testimony would be devastating. The other woman confirming that yes, Michael had told her his wife was dead. Yes, he'd discussed the insurance money. Yes, he'd explicitly stated his plan to kill me. At her deposition, which I attended, she looked at me with tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she'd whispered. "I really didn't know you were alive. You thought you were getting a widower with money," I'd said flatly. "Instead, you got a con artist who would have eventually done the same thing to you. You're lucky you figured it out when you did." She nodded, unable to speak, and I felt nothing. Not pity, not anger, not satisfaction, just cold understanding that some people were victims and some were opportunists, and Jessica had been both. The financial consequences for Michael were equally devastating. The courts immediately froze all his assets: bank accounts, investment portfolios, the house equity he'd stolen, everything. The insurance company, humiliated by the fraud, not only clawed back the $500,000 death benefit, but sued for additional damages and legal fees. My pension fund did the same. Social Security Administration pursued criminal charges for the fraudulent death benefits claim. Every dollar Michael had touched was seized, documented, and earmarked for restitution. The house, our house that he'd refinanced without my knowledge, was cleared of the fraudulent $200,000 equity loan. The title was returned to my name alone. Divorce proceedings were filed immediately. Michael didn't contest them. He had no leverage, no bargaining power, nothing. His gambling debts? Those were exclusively his problem. The loan sharks he owed $300,000 to couldn't touch me. Texas law protected spouses from debts incurred through fraud, and since Michael's entire financial situation was built on fraud, I had zero liability. He'd racked up those debts, he could die with them. Literally, since some of those people would be waiting for him when he eventually got out of prison, if he ever did. The social consequences were perhaps most satisfying. Michael's family, his mother, his two brothers, his extended network of relatives who'd attended our wedding and celebrated Emma's birth, abandoned him completely. His mother called me, crying, apologizing for her son. "I raised him better than this," she sobbed. "I'm so ashamed." "You should be," I'd said, but not unkindly. "But this isn't your fault. He made these choices." His colleagues at the financial advisory firm where he'd worked fired him within hours of his arrest. They released a statement. "We are shocked and appalled by the allegations against Mr. Chen. He has been terminated effective immediately, and we are cooperating fully with all investigations." His professional licenses were revoked. His reputation was obliterated. The community rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Neighbors brought food, offered support, told me they'd always thought something was off about Michael. Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor who'd witnessed and documented everything, became a local hero for her detailed logs that helped build the prosecution's timeline. The news coverage painted me as a survivor, a fighter, a woman who'd refused to stay a victim. Emma was shielded from the worst details. At 9 years old, she didn't need to know the specifics of her father's crimes. My sister Rachel and I crafted a careful explanation. Daddy made very bad choices. He hurt people, including Mommy. He's going to be away for a very long time because he broke the law. But this isn't your fault, and you're safe now. She cried. She was confused. She asked questions I couldn't fully answer without traumatizing her further. But she was resilient, my daughter, stronger than I'd given her credit for. And with therapy, with time, with unconditional love and support, she'd heal. Michael's prison letters started 3 weeks after his arrest. Handwritten pages of apologies, excuses, justifications. I was desperate. I made mistakes. I still love you. Please forgive me for Emma's sake. I didn't read them. I collected them in a box, gave them to my lawyer, and let them become part of the evidence file. Each letter was another demonstration of his narcissism, his inability to take genuine responsibility. They'd be useful at sentencing. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Video recordings, audio files, financial documents, testimony from Jessica, testimony from the forger who'd made the fake death certificate. He'd flipped on Michael in exchange for a reduced sentence. Testimony from me. I sat on the witness stand for 6 hours, calmly recounting every detail of Michael's betrayal, his fraud, his attempted murder. When the prosecutor asked, "What went through your mind when you realized your husband had declared you dead?" I looked directly at Michael and said, "I realized I'd never really known him at all, that the man I married was a fiction, and that I needed to become someone he couldn't hurt, someone stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than he'd ever given me credit for." The jury deliberated for 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Michael collapsed in his chair. His lawyer caught him before he hit the floor. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks later. At sentencing, I gave a victim impact statement. Not emotional, not angry, just cold, factual, devastating. Michael Chen tried to kill me for money. He declared me dead while I lay injured in a hospital bed. He drugged me to keep me compliant. He isolated me from friends and family. He stole from insurance companies, pension funds, and government agencies. And he did all of this while pretending to be a loving husband and father. The law will punish his crimes, but I want this court to understand. He didn't just break laws, he broke sacred vows. He weaponized my vulnerability. He taught our daughter that her mother was disposable. That kind of cruelty deserves no mercy. The judge agreed. Mr. Chen, you have committed some of the most egregious crimes this court has seen. You are sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for the first 15 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay $1.2 million in restitution to the victims of your fraud. You will be remanded to custody immediately. 25 years. He'd be 70 when he got out, if he survived that long. His life, as he'd known it, was over. Mine was just beginning. 6 months after Michael's sentencing, I stood in front of a mirror in my new house, a modest 3-bedroom in a different neighborhood, paid for in cash from my grandmother's inheritance. No mortgage, no debt, no ties to the life I'd lived before. Emma's room was painted lavender, her choice. My office overlooked a garden where I'd planted roses. The woman staring back at me from the mirror looked different than she had a year ago. Stronger, yes. I'd continued the physical training, had even started running 5Ks again. But it was more than physical. There was a hardness in my eyes now, a steel in my jaw. I'd been tested in ways most people never face, and I'd passed. I'd survived. More than survived. I'd won. My physical recovery was complete. The doctors had called it remarkable. Full mobility restored, bone density returning to normal, pain managed without medication. I'd worked with a physical therapist who specialized in trauma recovery, and together we'd rebuilt my body into something resilient. I was 43 years old and in the best shape of my life. But the real transformation was internal. I'd returned to work, but not to marketing. I'd gone back to my roots, fraud investigation. A major insurance company had hired me to head their new division focused on elder abuse and spousal fraud. My experience made me uniquely qualified, and I attacked the work with missionary zeal. Every case I solved, every fraud artist I caught, every victim I saved felt like retroactive justice for what had happened to me. I'd also started a nonprofit, Undead and Unbroken. The name was deliberately provocative, designed to catch attention. We provided resources for people who'd been victims of fraud by family members, legal aid, financial counseling, therapy referrals, support groups. The first year, we helped 147 people. The second year, that number tripled. I funded it partially through my inheritance and partially through speaking fees, because I spoke publicly now. At fraud prevention conferences, at women's empowerment events, at victim advocacy groups, my story was compelling, quotable, shareable. I was literally declared dead by my husband for insurance money, and I still won. People connected with it. The vulnerability of being injured, the betrayal by someone trusted, the determination to fight back, it resonated. After every speech, people lined up to talk to me, to share their own stories of betrayal and survival. I listened to everyone. I gave out my nonprofit's contact information. I told them what I told everyone. You are stronger than you know. You are never as powerless as they want you to believe. Emma and I had grown closer through the trauma. She was in therapy, processing her feelings about her father, learning to separate his crimes from her own self-worth. We talked openly now in ways we never had before. I taught her about strength, not just physical, but moral, about justice, about truth. "Mommy," she'd asked one night as I tucked her into bed, "why did Daddy do those bad things?" "Because he loved money more than he loved people," I'd said honestly. "Because he was selfish and weak. But Emma, listen to me. His choices don't define you. You get to choose what kind of person you become. You get to decide what matters to you." "I want to be like you," she'd whispered, strong, brave. "You already are, sweetheart. You already are." The philosophical truth I'd learned through all of this crystallized into something I shared at every speaking engagement. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But what happens when someone declares you dead while you're still breathing? You come back to life with a purpose. You become unkillable. Not physically, we're all mortal, but spiritually, emotionally, you become someone who cannot be erased, cannot be silenced, cannot be victimized again because you've learned the most important lesson. Your existence is not contingent on anyone else's approval or acknowledgement. You exist, you matter, you survive, and that is the ultimate revenge. Michael sent letters from prison, still begging for forgiveness. I stopped opening them after the first dozen. My lawyer suggested I read them. They might be useful for parole hearings down the line, but I didn't need to read Michael's self-pitying justifications. I knew what they'd say. He was sorry he'd changed. He deserved another chance. The universal refrain of abusers who'd been caught. No, he'd made his choices. He'd live with the consequences. At his 5-year parole hearing, which was ultimately denied, I submitted a statement. Michael Chen has shown no genuine remorse. His letters to me continue to center his suffering rather than the harm he caused. He still refers to his attempted murder of me as a mistake rather than what it was, calculated, premeditated violence. I do not forgive him. I do not want contact with him, and I will oppose his parole at every hearing for the rest of his sentence. The parole board agreed. He'd serve the full term. Trust, but verify. That was the universal truth I shared at the end of every speech, the lesson I'd learned the hardest way possible. The person who promises to love you in sickness can be the one who weaponizes your weakness. Marriage vows are beautiful, but they're words. Actions tell the truth. Michael had promised to love me in sickness and health. Instead, he'd used my sickness as an opportunity to profit from my death. Never trust blindly, I told audiences, even with people you love. Protect yourself financially. Know where the money goes. Have access to accounts. Keep something separate, something that's yours alone. It's not cynical. It's smart. It's survival. 3 years after Michael's conviction, Emma turned 12. We celebrated at our favorite ice cream shop, just the two of us and my sister Rachel. Emma laughed at something Rachel said, ice cream on her nose, and I felt my heart swell with love and relief. She was healing. We both were. Michael was in year 3 of his 25-year sentence at a federal correctional facility in Pennsylvania, far from Texas, far from us. According to the prison records my lawyer checked annually, he worked in the laundry facility, kept to himself, attended mandatory therapy sessions. He'd become unremarkable, invisible, the exact fate he'd tried to inflict on me. Meanwhile, I'd become anything but invisible. My nonprofit had expanded to 12 states, helping over 2,000 fraud victims in the past year. My fraud investigation division had a 94% conviction rate on cases we pursued. I'd been interviewed on 60 Minutes, had written a memoir that made the New York Times bestseller list, had been invited to testify before Congress about closing loopholes in insurance fraud law. The irony wasn't lost on me. Michael had tried to erase me, and instead I'd become more visible, more vocal, more powerful than I'd ever been in our marriage. I existed loudly now, defiantly, undeniably alive. At fraud prevention conferences, I'd end my keynote speeches the same way. If you've ever felt invisible, powerless, or erased by someone who claimed to love you, know this: you are never as powerless as they want you to believe. Your strength is in your truth. Your power is in your survival. Your victory is in refusing to let them win. I was declared legally dead by my husband. He filed the paperwork, collected the money, planned my murder. And I'm standing here today, alive, successful, and free, while he rots in prison. That's not luck. That's not accident, that's choice. I chose to fight. I chose to document. I chose to survive. And you can too. The standing ovations were gratifying, but the real reward came in the emails, the letters, the messages from people who'd heard my story and found courage to leave their own abusive situations, to report their own fraud, to fight back against people who'd tried to erase them. One woman wrote, "My husband was slowly poisoning me. Your story made me realize I wasn't crazy, that my suspicions were valid. I documented everything like you did, went to the police, and now he's in prison. You saved my life." That's why I kept talking, kept sharing, kept living loudly. Sarah and Emma in our new house, making new memories that had nothing to do with Michael. We took photos constantly, not of the past, but of the present. Emma's art projects, my garden, our weekend hiking trips. Evidence of life continuing, thriving, growing beyond trauma. One photo in particular sat on my desk. Emma and me at the finish line of a 5K we'd run together. Both of us sweaty and grinning, holding our medals. The caption I'd written underneath, "We run now, we're free." Now I want to hear from you. Which part of this story shocked you most? Was it Michael declaring me dead while I was in the hospital? The fact that he planned to murder me for insurance money? Jessica wearing a wire? The moment I broke his nose? Drop a comment below and let me know. And tell me, where are you watching from? Austin, Texas here. But our community of survivors is global. Whether you're in New York or New Delhi, Los Angeles or London, your story matters. Your survival matters. Comment your city below, and let's build this community together. If you agree that fraud artists deserve every year of prison time they get, hit that like button. If you believe in fighting back against people who try to erase you, share this video and subscribe for more stories of survival, justice, and revenge served cold. Remember, they can declare you dead on paper, but they can't kill your spirit unless you let them. I refuse to let Michael win. I refuse to stay erased. I came back from the dead, legally, physically, spiritually, and I did it by being smarter, stronger, and more ruthless than he ever expected. You have that same strength inside you, I promise. You just have to decide to use it. From Austin, with love and unbreakable will, stay strong, stay loud, stay undeniably, defiantly alive, and never ever let them count you out.